You are listening to the Wannabe Collective, your new variety podcast featuring every fandom that you could possibly think of. On the Wannabe Collective, all wannabes are welcome. Hello and welcome to the show. You are listening to the Wannabe Collective from Wannabe Critic Productions. Tonight, we are going to be reviewing Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It's going to be a good conversation. Unfortunately, one of our hosts could not make it tonight. If you're, familiar with us, it's usually me, as well as Caleb and Mikey and Rex, and also one Ryan Dalton, which, God rest his soul, he's not here, unfortunately. No, he didn't die. He just couldn't make it tonight.
Doesn't like me.
Yeah, no, he hates you. He actually texted me and said, "Hey, make sure in the outset of the episode, make sure you specifically say that I don't like Rex, and then I hate his guts." Yeah, so there's that. As I mentioned before, Caleb Henley, Mikey Collins, and Rex Tucker are all joining me for this review this evening. It's going to be good times. The Star Wars crew returns. Caleb, how you feeling?
I'm good. I'm actually in a really good mood. I can't wait to talk about this movie. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, same. It's going to be a good discourse. Mikey, how about you? How you doing, Pumpkin?
I'm doing fantastic.
It's like turned into me and Mikey's thing now, like on Game Club, going for the Uncharted. He said that like 3 times, and every time I go back to edit it, it makes me laugh so hard. Oh God, Rex, back to back. Again, on a Thursday, me and you just got done talking about My Hero Academia. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm doing good, man. I'm pretty excited too.
Yeah. So just so we're all clear, we all rewatched this movie for this review, correct?
What?
Yeah.
Get out! No, I'm just kidding. Okay, good. I just wanted to double check. So it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about this movie tonight, and we are going to do a bit of a catch-up, since the weekly show has returned. And it is going to be fun to whenever we get into this review, though, because especially with some of the responses that we got on Twitter, which you can obviously follow us on Twitter to let us know your thoughts about the movies that we review, and they'll be included in our reviews. But there was some interesting thoughts said, some interesting things said about this movie, and I think this one and Clone Wars, the Attack of the Clones. Sorry. People usually hate on the most, as well as The Last Jedi, I think, kind of all get lumped into the same category in a lot of ways for the majority of Star Wars fans, I would say.
And The Rise of Skywalker too.
Just a lot of the sequel movies. Go ahead, Rex.
I'm just gonna say I think it's mostly boomers that hate it, but that's just my opinion.
hate the
1, 2, and 3.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
we're firing shots right out of
already.
The gate
Someone's about to be so mad. They're gonna hear this and be like, "I hate these guys suck." You know what I mean? I don't know why it's
dang millennials.
Yeah, I don't know why it's a conservative guy from the Midwest saying those things, but it probably is. So it's gonna be fun though. But before we get into our review for this evening, and there's not a ton of news to speak of that I feel like talking about. The Summer Games Fest came out today, and I enjoyed the showcase a lot actually. But there's just not a lot that I feel like talking about. So if anyone else has anything news related they want to bring out, feel free. But it's been kind of I'm gonna start this time. It's been kind of slow going over here for Wannabe Critic Productions. We have a massive backlog of stuff to get out. As you know, we've started a YouTube channel. And just to reiterate, we're gonna be reminding everyone, you can go find the Wannabe Collective on YouTube and subscribe there, and you'll get all of the video podcast content that we do will be on that YouTube channel. But Game Club and a guy and his wife will still have their own podcast feeds. Everything else going to be on the Wannabe Collective. So just wanted to reiterate that. So yeah, definitely go subscribe over there. We would really, really appreciate it. And there's going to be plenty of content rolling out over there because there's so much. There was a ton of episodes that we didn't put videos out for at the time. That I still have. So, that's going to be plenty of content for a while. Guys, there's this game, you might have heard of it. It came out about 20 years ago. It's called RuneScape. And I've still been playing a lot of RuneScape and just having a blast. and
Dude, we're on an MMO kick right now,
dude. Yeah, no, it's true, and it's one of those games like I told myself that I wasn't going to play it unless like okay, I'm not going to play it unless I'm recording, which for the most part hasn't failed. Like Mikey, have you exited the room? You've exited this conversation. He turned his back. Good God.
Sorry, what? Sorry.
God,
Talking to me now?
No, I'm sorry. It's one of those games I said to myself, like, I'm not going to play it unless I'm recording, but I found myself doing stuff off camera on my iPad, and like trying to train, and the old school satisfaction is just so heavily present in that game, and I'm having a ball making content around it. Like, it's become like one of the core anchors for my YouTube channel over at The Wannabe Critic. The shameless plug.
Off camera, you're like, oh yeah, let me just grind up these
for real. Weapons. Like, just put on a show or put on a podcast. If I'm on my computer, go clicking away, and yeah, I mean, it is incredibly. Whenever you get that thing you really wanted, it's just really satisfying. So, and plus, it's got like the most engagement I've ever had on YouTube ever, like with people commenting and stuff. So that's always encouraging. But other than that, that's about all I've been up to. Caleb, I'm gonna throw it to you. What have you been up to, bro?
Really nothing super new, since the last show. Still reading the same book, still playing the same game. So, nothing new. The biggest thing that is new to my life, I was kind of mentioning it off mic, and it has absolutely nothing to do with anything we ever really talk about on this podcast, but I bought a Cobb access port for my, Golf GTI, which I installed today. Took it out for a little bit of a test drive, and oh my God, is it amazing. And I only did like the simplest little tune to it that it's like just a little bit of an upgrade, but you can feel the difference. And yeah, I'm just really excited about that, and continuing to mess with my car in little ways here and there, and hopefully get it up to its peak performance. Would be a cool little project for me to do. So I'm excited.
Nice. Mikey's losing it over
what
there.
What is
about
Mikey
something. I don't know. He's
about?
Laughing at you. Like you're talking about the things you love. Like you're happy to be on the show, and like you're talking about it, and like he's like laughing at you. We can't hear you.
Tuning is sweet. Like that's cool. I was thinking I have like a sketch comedy mind, and I was thinking of Caleb like driving down the road in his Golf with like a turtleneck and like LRB blaring in the background. But like
I'm not like Will Ferrell from the other guys. I'm not driving a Prius.
But like a before and after of like you put like a tuner kit in your car, and now you got like grills in, and you exclusively listen to the Yin Yang Twins, and you got like chains.
No, you'd be listening to trap music for
oh
sure.
Oh my God, what is happening?
It's basically trap music. That's funny.
Good God.
Sorry.
No, I'm glad you shared, Mikey, because everyone can know. Like, everyone's gonna know he is really losing. He's losing it, everybody. Like, I for one, I'm happy for you, Caleb. Caleb, I am genuinely happy for you, though. Like, I know you were excited to get that car upgrade. You were almost as pumped as whenever you told us you ordered it, and I can tell that you're a happy man these days because of your car. And I think it's really cool that I have a friend that likes car stuff. Because that just seems like just so out of the realm for me. Like it's something I'll just never really get into and just don't have the time to, or really the know-how to even know. I don't even know how a car works. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't have a concept of like how the engine actually does its thing and all that other stuff. So, my father didn't love me. No, I'm just kidding. But I am happy for you. So you'll have to keep us updated. You'll have to send in a clip, and we could post it on Twitter of your sweet, sweet ride. That we're talking
Record
about.
the audio.
Yeah.
You have to wait till I get a downpipe to do an audio clip, I think.
Have you seen that thing where people are taking balloons and cutting the ends off of it and then sticking it around their exhaust, and it's like sounds like a fart?
It sounds like a good way to melt plastic all over your
Yeah.
I mean, it does sound pretty funny. But anyways.
So you gonna cross pipe that baby, or what are you gonna do exhaust wise?
My God, Mikey, you're killing me.
Oh God. Since Mikey is in the hot seat right now, Mikey, what have you been up to? You're muted, brother.
Son of a! This is gonna get me tonight. I'll give you 3 guesses what I've been up to.
You've been working.
Nope.
Buying records.
You've been playing Uncharted.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go with that.
What else
I've
is
literally been doing nothing because we haven't had work for like a week.
there? Really?
And it's been awful. But I've been at home playing games. to be honest, I've just been watching a lot of streamers and like YouTube. But yeah, and listening to records because I just
How many hours of
and
Ninja
cleaning.
have you watched in the last week?
I don't watch Ninja really.
Thank
He's
God.
cool, but I kind of bounce around from like Tim the Tapman and like
he's
Courage
cool.
JD and like a bunch of guys like that.
I like the
But-
doctor.
Dude.
Yeah, Disrespect's pretty cool. I think he's on YouTube now. But yeah, mainly just records and YouTube. It's been so boring. I feel like I never had that COVID thing because we never got called home. We were I guess we were technically essential, so we never stopped working. So I haven't had like a week at home yet, and I'm going insane. So,
Well, there you have it.
anyways.
Sorry to hear that, but at the same time, like,
I have you talked about it? I've been watching Bad Batch. I've been really liking that.
we haven't talked about it.
Have you not?
I was thinking
Gabe
about maybe
hates it.
doing. I don't hate it. I'm not in love with it, and
It's interesting.
it's just not hitting for me.
Really? Have
Yeah.
you watched the newest episode?
I have not watched since episode 2.
Oh, okay. The newest episode was where I was like, oh,
Yeah,
this is cool.
and it hasn't been it hasn't been the thing of like I hate the show and like I'm not gonna watch it. I am gonna watch it. I've been invested in other things and I just haven't felt it pull me back. And I thought I was Star Warsed out a little bit, but no, like I was happy to watch this movie. There's just something about it. I don't know. Well, I'm still trying to formulate how I feel, but I'm gonna keep watching, and keep going on it. So, but yeah, we'll definitely. I would love to do an episode on that, maybe with this crew. So we'll see. Rex, what have you been up to?
Not much, man. Not much. I told you a little bit about my ducks. I've been raising some ducks.
Yeah, like I liked how Ryan put it. He is like waterfowl. That cracked
Yes,
me up
like
whenever he said
waterfowl.
that. That was funny.
Yeah. So they're getting big, and we moved them outside, and I had to make a pen for them and stuff, and just been doing that, and not a whole lot going on. Been playing some MMOs, been playing WoW and Hearthstone, and just kind of chilling. Yeah.
Living life, enjoying yourself.
It's getting hot out here, so about to hit up the beach soon.
Yeah. Say, how far away from the beach are you guys?
Oh, like 50 minutes to an hour, around there.
Man, that's nothing though for that area.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's rad. It's like where Mikey's at. Like anything fun, like it's like 45 minutes away. But it's like you just get used to it, and
That's how it is here. We got
And
like
then you never do it.
yeah,
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 exactly.
kind of. Yeah, well, it's the same thing for us. Like to go to the store, like to go do anything in town, which there's a handful of things. Like, hey, you want to go to this restaurant? It's like, okay, it's like 45 minutes away, and that's just you just get used to it, But the beach, that's kind of why we got a pool because we like the beach a lot. Like one of my favorite things to do in the whole world is to have like a case of White Claw, and a full cooler of White Claw, and like a big stack of comics. And like just lay on the beach, drink White Claw, and read comics. That's like one of my favorite things. And listen to
Dude.
podcasts. It's like one of my favorite things to do in the whole world.
That sounds awesome. You should come out here and we can do that.
Dude, I'd be down. But you don't talk to me because I'm listening to my shows. You know what I mean? No, I'm just kidding.
Skip the podcast. I mean, while we're together.
Yeah, we'll just talk. We'll just talk back and forth. No, that's cool though. That's nice to. I see you're drinking your Are you drinking your hard root beer again? Is that what it is?
No, it's just a cola. It's
Oh,
like a
just
fancy
okay.
cola.
Well, there you have it.
A little bit of caffeine.
Just a skosh. Just a skosh. Well, I think the time has come for us to get into our review of The Phantom Menace. But before we do, we're about 20 minutes in. What do you say we take just a really quick break? Is that all right with you guys?
How many drinks do you have in front of you right now?
Oh
4?
my god, you guys don't want to know.
Just pick them up one at a time. It's at least 4 or 5, dude. I swear. If
Gabe,
it's
you
less
need to
than
get
4,
So it was 5.
Oh my gosh.
it was
Gabe,
5.
you have to leave this in.
Dude, you didn't even tell me and I already knew. It's crazy. 4 or 5.
Gabe, you don't have to be ashamed about it. You're making it worse.
Let's go through. Let's see. What's the list?
Yeah, what is it?
Yeah,
You
what
got
do
your water. What's your caffeinated drink? What?
Water in a mug. Okay.
What's your 2 caffeine? You got a sody and you got some sort of caffeinated drink. It's a Raise. Oh, Game
Fuel.
Fuel. Got it.
Dr.
Wait,
Pepper.
that's 3.
Cherry
The other
Dr.
2.
Pepper?
What do you got? A vitamin water? Is that a
It's a
protein
Starbucks
shake?
coffee. Ew.
Oh my god, you have 3 caffeinated drinks.
Wait, we're missing one. What's the 5th one?
If you have 4, I don't know what to tell you.
There's the alcoholic one.
There it is.
Do you just like rotate through them or what?
Ladies and gentlemen, we got them.
Without ladies, we're done talking about beverages. What the flip is going on, Kip? Ladies and gentlemen,
You started
we are
it.
here. Shut up, Mikey. Ladies and gentlemen, we are here. This is the definitive Wannabe Collective review, the beginning of the Skywalker saga officially. I was thinking, yeah. Well, if I was a good producer, I'd put in some applause in there, but I'm not. So there you have
Yeah,
it.
you're too lazy.
Yeah, too lazy.
And
Oh, okay. I'm back. Yeah, I dipped out for a second, but I think I'm good. Before we get in, we only had we had 2 responses. I'm gonna do something different. We're gonna start the show with what people were saying on Twitter. So the first tweet, I said, "This is the week. We will be starting our reviews of the Skywalker saga, which will take a while to get through. Everyone in all caps loves Star Wars, and everyone has big opinions on Star Wars. What's yours? We want to hear from you and add your thoughts into each review. First up, obviously, The Phantom Menace." So we had one reply on that. Someone said, "I'm very excited about this." One Bush League Gaming. Thank you, Jacob. You're the man. Zoe Chanel wrote in on Twitter. This is what I think this is like the pretense, like that a lot of, not the pretense, but like the overall, this is how I think a good portion of people feel about this movie. So Zoe Chanel wrote in, and as I was saying before, I feel like a lot of people, this is how they feel about this. This is how, shocker, that's Mikey's wife. I feel like this is
Zoe
how
Deschanel.
Yeah, Zoe Deschanel, exactly. She says, "Pure cringy nostalgia and repressed childhood memories. 2 out of 10. 2 out of 10.
Shots fired, babe. Thanks.
I mean, that is like, so she hates this movie. If that's how you feel, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you let us know. Tweet at us, email us at thewannabecollective@gmail.com. So, luckily, we don't have to worry about, like somebody recapping it and, like talking about what this movie is about, because, we have the crawl to read. It says, "Turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. Hoping to resolve the matter with a blockade of deadly battleships, the greedy Trade Federation has stopped all shipping to the small planet of Naboo. While the Congress of the Republic endlessly debates this alarming chain of events, the Supreme Chancellor has secretly dispatched 2 Jedi Knights, the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy, to settle the conflict." Okay, can we give a rating to the crawl? Like, because to me, like, that's just kind of a lot to keep up with, in my opinion. Yes, that is what the movie is about. In fact, go ahead, Mikey.
Least favorite crawl.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. It's like a solid 2 or 3 out of 10.
Not much information.
Well, it's plenty of information, but it's just not interesting at all. It doesn't get you hyped for the movie at
Yeah,
all.
that was one thing Ryan wrote in. He said nobody wants to hear about trade routes in the galaxy. And we'll get into, we're going to read Ryan's takes later at the end of the show. So obviously our
You can
two,
skip those.
what'd you say?
You can skip those.
Or Mikey, like Mikey was saying, I'll claim them for myself. Like my best takes will be his takes.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty funny. Obviously, Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan, they're going to try and talk to the Trade Federation, and then basically it all breaks loose. The Trade Federation invades Naboo. There's a lot of things going on with the Chancellor at that time, or the would-be Chancellor, Palpatine. This is kind of his rise to power. We'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. in which the Phantom Menace, known as, Darth Maul, basically, kind of comes to the forefront. Oh, I'm sorry. The Phantom Menace is actually Palpatine in the background, but, there's speculation that it might be Darth Maul. They don't really know. We'll talk about kind of the Jedi and how they feel about this whole Sith thing. It's like, well, the Sith have been extinct for, or have been gone for years and years, yada, yada, yada. And, it's a big opening to a really big saga. Does anyone else want to add anything to the overview before we kind of get into it? Yeah, I think that's about it. I think we got it. So Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. Do we like this movie? Yes or no? If you had asked me 2 years ago, I would have said no. I don't like this movie. I think I would have said something like, in the realm of Star Wars, like it's Star Wars and I enjoy Star Wars, yada, yada, yada. But no, I don't. That's not my favorite. I do like this movie. I like it now. For reasons that I'll get into later. Caleb, you like this movie?
Look, that's such a loaded question. It really is. It's kind of heavy, but no, I do like this movie, kind of along the same lines as you. Does this movie have major flaws, and are there some really terrible portions of it that have been dissected extremely heavily? And I'm sure we're going to get into them as well. Yeah, it does. It's got some really big flaws, but it's also got some good parts, some entertaining parts, and I think that you can have fun with it. And I think Mikey said this off mic. Sorry to steal it from you, buddy, but that if you kind of take off the critical goggles, you can have fun with it. It's not that bad.
Okay, Mikey, the reins are yours, partner.
Yeah, just basically what Caleb said. If you don't look at it through a critical view, it's an okay movie, but I want to say that I like this movie just from the nostalgia of me and you and like Carter watching it. Like this movie, I think I've watched this with you guys more than any Star Wars movie growing up. We watched this one a lot. But past that and the high points of the movie, I can't say that I like this movie. But I don't, as Ryan Mazzacco would say, I don't not like this movie. So
I have to ask.
That's where I'm at.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Well, we're gonna take this a place I wasn't quite thinking of at first until just now. But Rex, how do you feel? Do you like this movie?
Yeah, I think Mikey's right. It's very hard to disconnect the nostalgia that I feel for this movie because I saw it in theaters when I was like 12 and absolutely like loved it. It was like the best thing ever at the time, Yeah.
How old are you?
I'm 30.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Dude, I thought you were like 22.
No, I'm 30.
It's a compliment.
Thank you. But yeah, so I saw it when I was younger. I grew up watching the trilogy. So I tried to disconnect the nostalgia while I watched it this time and kind of just think about it as if I'm watching it for the first time. And you get a little sleepy at times. Like, I'm not gonna lie. It's a hard rewatch. But maybe because I've seen it so much and I know exactly what's gonna happen, I don't know. But overall I like it, but it's not like it's amazing.
Okay. So we all have, I think we're all kind of in a similar on a similar page, or we're really close to all kind of being one of us. It's not the greatest. And we're going to talk about why. We put these goggles and like we revere like 4, 5, and 6 as like these legendary movies, and like they're so amazing, and like there's no fault in them. Like, oh, you can't fault the original trilogy. Like, how dare you? And that's pretentious. Because there's plenty of things wrong with those movies, but we'll get to that at a different time. So why do we look at this movie in particular? Why do we look at it through a different lens? Is it because there are parts of the movie that are just bad? Or could this movie have been 100 times better given like a few minor changes. And I think that's kind of the discussion I'd like to go for tonight is, and we'll get into it, like what we would have changed, right? A few things of what we would have changed to make this movie better, potentially. Not only just the movie itself, but the grander, building the mythos of Star Wars and like the bigger picture. Because I was watching this movie and I'm like, man, if they would have done this, this, and this differently, it'd be a completely different conversation, I think. But there's no doubting that we all have nostalgia for it. We all have love for this movie, I think. Like things that we like about it a lot. So I want to start with those things first. I'm going to kick this off with the high points of the things that I really like. So first things first, I kind of was like you, Rex. Like I not only put myself in the position of like, this is the first time I'm watching it, but especially after I really tried to come at it with like new eyes, like after going through the animated series, and just kind of really spending a lot of time with Star Wars this past year or two, going through all that stuff and, listening to the shows again and like familiarizing myself again with the content that Lucas was a part of after, with all the animated stuff. And I found myself feeling like The Phantom Menace in a lot of ways felt like a 3 or 4 episode arc of the Clone Wars. And I kind of connected it with that. And I was less, it was almost like you were able to kind of put that goggle of this is for kids. Like this is for kids. But there is cool stuff to it. And it has its moments of like, okay, that felt cool, or like that felt like Star Warsy. So I applaud it for that, and I applaud it that Clone Wars is able to kind of harken back to Phantom Menace in a lot of its episodes, like with feeling, like in that it kind of feels a part of the same thing. I like that it feels, I don't know if that was planned intentionally or whatever, but it feels like it belongs in that stream of time, which, it is. Qui-Gon Jinn is one of the coolest characters ever. Like, I love Qui-Gon Jinn. I liked kind of seeing, there was a couple of things I've been picked up on, like Obi-Wan watching him. And I guess, we learned the Jedi mind trick from Obi-Wan in A New Hope, right? But like seeing Qui-Gon do that a couple of times and like knowing that Obi-Wan had like kind of watched him do that. And maybe they were kind of the ones, I don't know. Like I that was cool just to like watch him observe Qui-Gon doing those things. And I think there's a lot of really good action in this movie. Obviously, the Darth Maul scene's amazing, and we'll get into that for sure. But those are my high points. Caleb, go ahead, Rex.
No, I wanted to piggyback a little bit because you mentioned something that kind of resonated. Like, there's really good things in the movie and really bad things at the same time, and I think that's what makes it so hard to judge.
Yeah, no, it is, and I think if you can. Once you identify, because whenever something's so bad and like it bleeds in throughout the entire thing and you're like, why am I disliking this movie now? Is it because that what I'm actively watching is bad? Or is it because something that happened 10 minutes ago is subconsciously still pissing me off? And I think that's a big part of this, and I definitely want to dissect that as we get into it. But Caleb, what are your high points?
So kind of along the same lines as you, there's 3 characters in this movie that kind of carry it. There's of course Liam Neeson as Qui-Gon, Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, and then can't remember the name of the actor that's Darth Maul, but Darth Maul is awesome in this movie too. But those 3 characters, Ray Park, that's it. They're all incredible. Just the kind of mysteriousness of Maul, and Maul ends up being one of my favorite characters, kind of as you go down the Rebels and Clone Wars series too. But man, the dynamic between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon is just so good. It's just really well acted and really, really cool to see their dynamic. And you can really see how kind of it's laying the groundwork for how Obi-Wan is going to become who he ends up becoming and what he's kind of going to instill on Luke as well. And it's really cool. And kind of, I was trying to watch this with the perspective of this, like if I had grown up and seen 4, 5, and 6 in the 80s and then had a 14, 15 or 16 year gap, whatever it was, between those movies, and then you're going to see this one in the theaters, and just the feeling, that first scene after the crawl of, those, two shadowy figures, the Jedi, and seeing two Jedi together like that would have been so cool after watching that original trilogy and seeing them interact together and seeing that the master and Padawan dynamic that Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan have just in that first little opening scene. And, Obi-Wan saying, I got a bad feeling about this. And, they're talking about Master Yoda, and just, it would have brought back all these nostalgic feels to your childhood watching that opening scene. And I love that sort of thing. And I just love their dynamic. And there are some really good scenes. I really like the pod racing scene. If you took out all of the spots where people are just randomly talking during it, I love how intense it is and the whole dynamic of it. But it's just ruined by random shots of the commentators and fart jokes and Jar Jar and stuff. But everything else around it is just awesome. And there's some really, really well-directed parts of this. And I'm sure we'll get into it. But yeah, those are my high points, I guess.
I like what you said about, like, because I tried to place myself, like what you said, like, okay, this is the first time we're seeing Star Wars again after God knows how long. We had never seen a master and a Padawan together like that, ever. So when you see those lightsabers light up in the fog, and that was something Ryan mentioned as well, when you try and place yourself there, it's like, oh, crap, like this is about to go down. And even whenever you see the Trade Federation ship, to me, this time I kind of looked at it through that. I was like, oh my God, we're in space. Like this is happening. Like here we are. Like it's almost like how I felt at the beginning of whenever the Star Destroyer comes in at the beginning of was it Rise of Skywalker, I believe? So like, or was it? No, it was Last Jedi. It was Last Jedi. Whenever the Star Destroyer comes in, like, and you're in the theater, and it was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Go ahead, Caleb.
You saying that brought back another thing that I thought was a high point. There's some weird CGI in this movie for it being 1999, especially like the computer generated characters such as Jar Jar mixed in too with the puppets characters as well. It's a weird mix of the two. It's kind of jarring. But besides the actual characters, everything about this movie looks really crisp and colorful, especially like the ships and the droids and everything. For the time, it all looks really good. And I think aged pretty well, despite it being 22 years old at this point. I actually liked it. But yeah, that scene of them coming up on, those, Trade Federation droid control ships or whatever they're called, it looks really good. And like seeing a blockade like that of that many ships in the beginning, it's just, yeah, it puts things in scope. It gives you scope out of the start. And the world building in this movie too is just, it's really good. It's really, really good.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I don't want to take away from the other guys too, but yeah, just to kind of like the saying about CGI, I was paying attention. You kind of like take for granted whenever like a droid gets like hacked in half and you're like, okay, whatever. I really watched it this time and I was like, that looks really good. Like the computer animation there is awesome, actually, for the time that it came out. And we just kind of take it for granted because we've seen that happen a million times, But I was like, man, 1999? Wow. Okay. But I also agree with you in that, some of the other like CGI set pieces, like when those, the tanks are rolling over the hill, I was like, ooh, Halo 1 called it wants its graphics back. But Mikey, what are your high points for this movie?
I kind of want to touch on that. Yeah, like it feels like they wasted their budget on the first half of the movie CGI wise. And then later on they're like, "Oh crap, we have a whole CGI battle to do." But I mean, this might be a hot take, but I went into this movie, I was like, okay, biggest problem with the movie, Padme Anakin.
Okay, this is high points.
Like, how old are they?
High
I know
points.
that's what I'm getting to it. I went in and I was like, how old are they supposed to be? So I looked up. Anakin's supposed to be 9 and Padme is supposed to be 14. And so I went in just focusing that those characters are those ages. And I actually really enjoyed like Anakin and Padme like conversing and together. Like it wasn't as cringy as when like, you know what I mean? Like it was enjoyable. And then realizing that he is a kid and she's supposed to be a little more mature of still a kid, but like just like how she's supposed to be forced into like that role of being like a leader and how mature she probably is for her age, it made a lot of sense, and I actually really enjoyed that aspect of the story. But I know that is not a big thing for a lot of people. But what's up, Caleb?
No, I was gonna say I don't agree with you with the Anakin thing, but Padme is at her best in this movie. I think
Yes.
Natalie Portman's performance. I think she was like 17 or 18 when this movie came out. She does really good. It kind of falls off in the later movies, but she's at her best in this movie. She also has the most to actually do in this movie. But yeah,
and like just like the character swapping with her and Keira Knightley, and like the doppelgangers, and like how nobody, like the mystique surrounding her character, because you would think they would notice that it wasn't her, but if you like look closely at all of her, like her handmaids, they all look exactly the same, like without makeup. It's pretty cool, like how they did that. And I don't know, there was just a lot of little details that I noticed this watch through. I haven't watched this since me and Gabe. Wait, no, you and Emma had just gotten married, and when we did our last podcast on that, one of the first podcasts of like this show, like this thing, that was the last time I watched this movie. And then all of the Star Wars content I've consumed since then, feel like applying that on top of this movie makes it a better movie. So people that don't have that knowledge, I could still see like how they would have a problem with this movie. But with all of that in mind, I feel like it's not as bad of a movie as everybody thinks it is, with all of those loose ends tied up that are in this movie. So I don't know. I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I was going to.
I think those are good compliments across the board, like good things to say about the movie. And like, it's this weird thing where I have to ask the question is like, do the animated series like make this movie better? And like, is it more palatable because we watched all of the animated series? Like to me, it's like, that's why I'm thinking like, God, Star Wars is one of the rare stories where if you keep coming back to it, your mind can be changed. Like based off of, if you swap a couple of things out, it's like, yeah, but did you think about this? Like, did you watch this, this, and this? And it's like, I didn't really think about that. Because to me, I would have fought you if you said that Last Jedi was a bad movie. I'd be like, dude, you're not getting it. Like, but after watching it a couple more times and seeing like, okay, there's big problems here, but I still like it. And I think that's what it comes down to is we have friends of the show that, the first couple times we went through this movie, I have friends of the show that were like messaging me, like so mad that we just tore the movie apart, but it wasn't right to do so. You know what I mean? And there are really good things in this movie for sure. Go ahead, Rex.
And when you think about it, a lot of people that grew up watching the trilogy when they came into this movie, they had already kind of developed opinions on Star Wars in general in their mind. And I think this kind of changed everything for them. And I think that's why that initial criticism was so harsh. Whereas we grew up with this being Star Wars, like partly, mostly. So I think that kind of changes things especially the initial criticism was probably a lot more harsh.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And while you're there, what are your high points for this first movie?
I also really loved the pod racing and just that whole dynamic of Tatooine and pod racing. I thought that was really cool. And when I was younger, I would play this like pod racing video game on my computer. It was like super cool. But anyways, the pod racing, that whole scene, I think all of Tatooine I really like. The intro's really amazing and well done for sure. And I really liked Naboo and their like culture and the buildings, kind of the set pieces for that. And Darth Maul, of course. I think we kind of talked about, or covered almost all my high points. So that's pretty much it. Oh, and you get more of an idea of what Jedi are in this movie. Because in the trilogy, the original trilogy, you don't know much about the Jedi, right? Like,
yeah, for sure.
Who they were. Yeah.
There was so much that I didn't notice about the Jedi. about how they felt and how I wouldn't have noticed it otherwise had I not gone through the Clone Wars. I was like, wow, you guys are sitting in there in your high tower being arrogant, and like that is definitely present. I had never really thought about that, in this movie, and I love that they definitely snuck it in there. And if you're not looking for it or paying attention to it, or even if it's not on your radar, you're not going to be like, oh my god, these guys are idiots. Like, for reasons, for sure. I wanted to sneak Ryan's positives in here. It says the ship designs for the Trade Federation and Naboo are cool. I wanted to say, did anyone else think that the droid operators looked like the beginnings of a Death Star a little bit, with the center kind of being a circle like that? Did anyone else get that? I've always thought that since I was a little kid. I'm like, the center of that kind of looks like, like Death Star-esque. Could be alone, but anyways. He says, lightsabers igniting in the fog. Cool shot. He says, I do like that they immediately established the mere presence of a Jedi is intimidating. The reveal of Darth Maul, both on the hologram and before the fight, was awesome. I like seeing one person resist the mind trick. No, they don't. Whenever he tries it on Watto, he's like, credits, 3 credits, doing his thing. He says, I liked watching Palpatine whisper in Padme's ear during the Senate hearing, just like he did with Anakin during Revenge of the Sith. One bit of good writing craft. On the flight back to Naboo, there's a scene where Anakin is learning from the pilot the basics of flying a Nubian ship. So it makes more sense later when he hops into a Nubian fighter and figures out how to fly it. Cough, cough, unlike Rey. All right, whatever. It's not the same. Anyways. And that's all the good things. He then had 3 or 4 long messages about all the problems that he has with it. So we'll get to that in a minute. Go ahead, Mikey.
I kind of want to touch on the high point of his, where it's how strong and like terrifying the Jedi are. Coming from the original trilogy to like this movie, that moment when those droids roll up after they're like melting the door down, and how freaked out those guys are. Did you guys catch how fast they get out of there? Like it's like a blink of an eye, like how quick they are. It was like, Nani? Like total anime, like how quick. I love how powerful they make them look. I never realized that till and I paid attention to them jumping out of those vents and making it look like it was no big deal. Like how powerful they do make them seem in the beginning of this movie. I really enjoyed that. Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
You really get
really
that
cool.
kind of sense of space agents, Go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, it's just you're setting the setting as being completely different than what was in the original trilogy. Because obviously, Order 66 hadn't happened. All of these different things hadn't happened yet. So the setting is just completely different. And I think it's really, it's really cool because it allows you to buy in real quick to oh, this is different. Things are completely different, and it allows you to buy into the rest of the world building that it does from then on out.
Yeah, and I think I applaud this movie. It has such a unique feeling to it, that I don't really ever feel like ever comes back in the subsequent movies, really. I mean, it's all Star Wars. There's a certain feeling that this movie has, and it's like, man, I wish I could have had the better version of this, and I just never really feel like we got it. And maybe it's because we're in Naboo for so long. I think Naboo is a really cool planet. Sans the whole fish chase scene and stuff, which we'll get into. But yeah, I mean, it definitely set the tone for a new generation, and I think that's a good way to put it. Is they definitely were trying to attack everybody. They weren't targeting just kids here. They were targeting people who loved the original trilogy, who had grown up with them, and they were trying to recreate that feeling. Which is why we have so many younger people, in their early 20s walking around saying that their favorite Star Wars is the prequel trilogy, and don't like anything else really. And in another 15 years, there might be a group of people walking around saying that like the sequel trilogy is their favorite trilogy. And it's interesting how things work out that way. So, we've been talking about, the good things for this movie for a while now. I think it's time to get into the bad, the things that we don't like. And I'm actually going to start with Ryan's thoughts because I think he's going to cover a lot of the stuff that, I think I was reading it and I was like, man, there's a lot here that I think we could all kind of build off of, So are you guys good with that? Okay. He says, right away in the opening crawl, there's a problem. My first ever note to George Lucas would have been, dude, no one goes to see Star Wars and wants to hear anything about trade route taxation. This is space opera. You could have invented 100 more interesting reasons for this whole conflict. Why not relate it to something cool? Like what if Naboo had discovered a shockingly large deposit of kyber crystals and the Trade Federation wanted to seize control of it all? And if they've threatened that, if Naboo doesn't give up the crystals in a short amount of time, they will invade the planet. Now we have a ticking clock and the threat of violence, which is a much better reason to send the Jedi than to arbitrate a trade dispute. It also introduces some deep lore about the nature of the crystals and ties in the conflict directly to the interests of the Jedi and the Sith. I know that Palpatine is playing a larger game here, but if we're watching a space opera movie, we want the pieces of that game to all be interesting. And then he goes on for a little bit more about that. He says, the stupid fish trying to eat their ship underwater. He says, this kind of thing drives me crazy because you could just tell they said, we need some kind of action or danger here. He says, no, that's filler. Basically, it's all filler crap at that point. And, it was patently obvious they were going to all be fine. So don't bother with having such a long filler scene. He says, in a real conversation, go ahead, Rex.
Did anyone like that scene? Because I feel like I kind of liked it.
I liked it.
Terrible. I didn't have a problem with
scene?
that scene.
I like it for like the first couple minutes. It felt like it drug on a little bit, in my opinion, but I don't hate it.
At least it's not a room of people sitting
Where they
and
go
talking.
through the core of the planet.
Yeah.
Oh,
I thought the CGI was good
I
too.
thought it was enjoyable. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I-
not the
I like-
worst part of this movie by any stretch of the
I like how
imagination.
like Qui-Gon and Obi were just like totally fine. Like
And
Yeah, I love that Qui-Gon's
That-
just
they
sitting
were-
in the back, not doing anything.
Yeah, he's
it's
like,
kind
"We'll
of
be
amazing.
okay."
he just knocks Jar Jar out.
yeah, and like I didn't realize the first time, or at least any time I watched it, they had no idea where they were going. So they were just like letting the Force like guide them basically. So he's like, I don't sense any danger, so we're gonna be fine. Just go there. Like, but Jar Jar's freaking out. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. I disagree, Ryan.
There you have it. He says, in a real conversation, things are supposed to come up naturally. A dead giveaway of some pretty clumsy hack writing is for a character to suddenly, out of the blue, and apropos of nothing, bring up the thing that they want the audience to know. Like out of nowhere, Anakin asks if anyone has ever seen a pod race. He says there's nothing organic about it. I kind of get that a little bit, but, it's there. He says Anakin's dream. Okay, and we're kind of incorporating, the things that he might add or things he would have changed or whatever into this. I wanted to get all of his stuff out of the way. That way we could kind of build off of it. And I know that this conversation is probably going to go 100 different directions anyways, so might as well just get, the guy who couldn't be here, his thoughts out of the way. Says Anakin's dream about being a Jedi and coming back to free all the slaves. He says they missed a golden opportunity later for that to pay off. When he finally does come back to try and save his mother, what should have happened. And actually, you know what? I'm just making a note here. We're going to save that one. We'll let him say that for the next episode because it really doesn't have a ton to do with this movie anyways. Yeah, and that's about it. So the core things to take away. He didn't like Anakin bringing up, just out of nowhere pod racing. He didn't like the stupid fish. And then kind of the crawl, which we talked about already, it's not great. And yeah, there you have it. So go ahead, Mikey.
I have to pee.
Oh God. Okay. Does anyone else have to pee? Okay. Let's take another break. Okay. So kind of getting into the, there was a few things to go off of there, and I'm glad there wasn't, like, I'm sure some of what we would have changed might bleed into this, but if we can, focus on the negatives, things we don't like. That'll be the best thing. I'm only going to say one because I really want to hear what you guys have to say. Go ahead, Rex. Sorry.
Well, I just wanted to touch on Ryan's because none of those seem too crazy. Like, I was expecting worse from Ryan.
I have to agree with Rex on that for sure. I was expecting
I have a
worse
feeling
from
he was
Ryan.
holding
Yeah.
back a little bit.
Yeah. Well, he had more to say. There were, I think, yeah. I mean, it'll be, and he might have been. It was, of course, we couldn't have just sat there and just read it all. If he, whatever, all the thoughts that he had and stuff like that. But, yeah. I mean, I'm just going to touch on the biggest one for me, and it's going to be slightly where you could have changed it potentially. Jar Jar Binks, for me, I see what they were going for. I really do. I've tried. I've made my opinions vocal so many times about this, and it's fun. It is fun to dump on the character, and I've done it a million times, but I'm done dumping on it, and I'm trying to be like optimistic about it, and like just try and find good things to say about it. I see where they were going with it. The issue is there is not one shred of serious nature in that character the first time we meet him in this movie. There's nothing. Every time we see him, he's being an idiot. And then you're telling me he ends up in the Senate later? So had there been anything, and I don't want to hear the argument of like, oh, well, it's for kids and blah, blah, blah. You know what else is for kids? Cartoons. Yet there's some of the best like character development in animated entertainment to where, yeah, even the idiotic guy, you can somewhat take him seriously sometimes, depending on the movie or the show or whatever. And like, we talk about anime. Every character has their moment of like, oh, wow, like that was cool. Like, I'm glad he did that. But there's nothing for me to like take him seriously with. And I think that's, I've nailed that down to like, then leave him as just like a side character. Like, don't make him a part of the Senate. Go ahead, Rex.
Would you say he's jarring?
Cut it. Cut that out.
We're in. The podcast
Because-
is over.
Oh my God.
The movie is so serious, like you said, and then you have this outlandish character. Who,
Yeah, no, and you hit it on the head though. Like, I want like there's a couple of times where he does things and I'm like, well, that was kind of funny. Like whenever they get captured and they think the war is over, he's like, I give up. I give up. Like I thought that was funny, And there are a couple of moments where I enjoyed Jar Jar, but I'm like, could we have him be serious just for like 2 seconds? Like, please? Because that in of itself would have made it his arc later on somewhat redeemable. It's like, well, at least he had that one moment where he was like, no, like, I love the Gungans and like I'm proud to be a Gungan. No, there's nothing like that. Why do we make him a general? I don't understand. Go ahead, Mikey.
The only thing that I could think of, because I know George Lucas like wrote that character for his little girl at the time, right? And because she thought he was funny, like that's why he wrote that character into the story. The only thing that I think of, even if you left him alone and made him an idiot the whole time, the one redeeming thing is when they make him a captain of like our general of the army. Make him just like go for it instead of being a complete just klutz. Like instead of like something, because he just immediately falls off the horse. And if in that scene, if he was like even a smidgen like of like
a warrior,
I don't know.
No, like like if he, yes,
it's a warrior race.
Yes, like that's what I'm talking about.
You would think he would have training.
If we've been watching him this whole time be an idiot, and then he just goes ham, and it's like, oh my God, like he is a freaking god on the battlefield. Yeah, it would make sense. It's like, yeah, put him in the Senate. He's great. He can lead. Go ahead, Caleb.
Yeah, it's kind of weird that they just did not give him like any redeemable qualities whatsoever. And you feel bad because Jar Jar is probably the biggest thing that has been picked apart about this movie. And, we've picked it apart on this podcast before. And it's terrible too. Like I can't remember what the actor's name is that portrayed him, but he put his heart and soul into that character. And I think he's even been quoted as saying that he basically is Jar Jar. Like that's him as a as a character like that. And it's sad that it's been dumped on as much as it has. But yeah, it doesn't super land. It's kind of funny. I do think there are people. Yeah, it's sad. There are people that do appreciate his character. I know, like my wife likes him just because of how stupid he is. Like he is just so stupid. But yeah, it is just such a weird tonal change to what we're used to from Star Wars. I mean, you get a little bit of goofiness with like Yoda in Empire Strikes Back, but this is just on like such an other level, and it does like almost tonally change the entire. It just tonally changes the entire movie to something different than what the original trilogy was, and it is just kind of very, very jarring.
I get the George Lucas's like kid show argument, like where he's coming from. The first 3 movies were not written for kids. There's no way. So going from that to this, and then he's like, it's for kids. I mean, it's for kids.
my saga is for kids.
Yeah, like I get the argument he's trying to make, but it just doesn't line up with what he's already had. So adding a character like that, that's why it's so jarring.
Here's the thing too.
Yeah.
Use the same rules for a different type of character. Let's flip the script on a villain. If a villain was only one-dimensional, like they have their place for sure. Like one-dimensional villains, but then guess what we say about that villain? Like, oh yeah, I couldn't relate to him. Like he's not really a good character. It's the same thing with Jar Jar. He's one-sided, and he's a buffoon. That's the thing. Like that's what his character is a buffoon. And if you're gonna make him a buffoon, that's fine. Could have used way less. It has its moments. It does the job it's supposed to. He's in this movie so much. It is jarring. Go ahead, Rex.
That is why he's obviously force sensitive.
Don't start this. Don't go down this road.
This unspoken rule of not bringing up the dark side.
Don't go down
Yeah,
this road.
I just want to say that
all of these podcasts are going to be so long already. We don't need to add any extra.
Okay, I'll just say
ridiculousness
this:
to them.
like his character's so ridiculous that people had to come up with this theory, and it's an awesome theory. Like I totally wish it was true, but they had to do that because of his character being so dumb.
Yeah. No, it is a good point. He is like the Dogecoin of Star Wars. Like,
So, something that I never realized that actually did redeem his character a little bit for me of like why he's actually in the movie. I didn't realize they basically gave him a Wookiee life debt to Qui-Gon. I never realized until this watch through, and I was like, oh, so that's why he's basically hauling him around everywhere. So that did give him a little bit of a pass for me, but everything else is pretty rough still.
Yeah.
So
Jar Jar's the biggest thing for me. That's all I'll say. That's my biggest negative that I don't like about this movie. And the biggest takeaway for me is like, I'm still pissed about that thing Jar Jar did like 5 minutes ago. Like I wish I wasn't thinking about that. Like, why did they do that right then, right before we're about to get into like this moment? And why are we seeing him while the Jedis are fighting? Like, why are we seeing more Jar Jar? Focus on the Jedis. So I don't like Jar Jar. There's that. Caleb, why don't you keep this train rolling?
Yeah, so I'll mention 2 things, and I'll try to keep it kind of brief because I'm going to get into one of them a bit more in the what would you change portion of this. But one is Anakin. Look, I don't really want or like dumping on child actors because God knows how terrible I would be if I was put in that position to be a child actor. But it's just not executed well. And for a character as pivotal to the Skywalker saga as Anakin Skywalker, you should expect it to be executed well. And I feel bad for Jake Lloyd. Like he's had a rough go of it, like really, really rough go of it since him being in this movie. And again, I cannot imagine being put in that spot. And I'll get into it more, but I feel like he probably should have never been put in that spot to begin with. Yeah, go ahead, guys.
Rex. No.
I just don't know the big issue with that. Like I've haven't heard too much about that, like him doing a bad job. Like I didn't see that, like that he was terrible.
He had a lot of like internet hate back in the day, and like he had to like go to therapy, and like it was
That's
rough
really
for him
sad.
Yeah.
after this movie came out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's terrible, and that's a problem with child actors, and you see that time and time again, whether it's, you know, a Disney star of some sort or, you know, yeah, Jake Lloyd. It's terrible. It's a terrible, terrible part of our society. It's terrible. But yeah, I think that, you know, Mikey said that he enjoyed.
Cancel Star Wars.
Yeah, no. Look, it's more than just Star Wars, obviously. But Mikey said that he enjoyed Padme and Anakin's relationship. I liked Padme in this movie. I didn't like Anakin as much. I'll get back into that once we get around to what you would have changed. The other thing I don't really enjoy in this movie, and I don't think it has aged particularly well, is a lot of the aliens portray racial stereotypes. This has been something that's kind of been commented on, whether it's Watto or the Neimoidians or even Jar Jar. It's pretty jarring in 2021. It's definitely something I think that they're definitely more sensitive to now. Yeah, it just has not aged well, and it's pretty jarring. I cannot stand how the Neimoidians are portrayed at all in that opening scene. It takes an otherwise like really, really well done opening scene and just makes it so jarring and terrible. But yeah, I mean, it's just bad.
Say it, baby. Just say it.
I just think that like it's hard to maybe just come up with a new culture, like new habits that culture has, and it's just like they just didn't know what to do, I think.
Yeah. And that totally makes sense. But like, for instance, like they created new cultures in like Star Trek, or like, you know, you take like the Vulcans, for example. That's not offensive. I don't think. A lot of these, I think, if you were like, we're all white men. I think if you were one of those cultures that's kind of portrayed in this, and you saw that, I think it could be offensive extraordinarily easily. And yeah, it's like you can make excuses for it, but it's just it's jarring.
Yeah, I agree. I think my wife even said like, "Whoa, that's kind of racist." Like,
yeah, it is. And I think a good, you know what? And I hate comparing sci-fi, because sci-fi is just so across the board. Like the differences between Star Trek and Star Wars, and even like something like more recently that I've been playing Mass Effect. One thing that I love about some of these other sci-fi universes is like, okay, instead of attaching a stereotype to an alien, pull a Geonosian like you do in number 2. Like, subtitle it. Like, give them subtitles. Give them a made-up language with, you know, made-up noises. Give them subtitles. It's really easy to avoid that.
Another thing, like, on top of that is either the subtitle thing or something that I feel like they did a really good job with when, like, the Clone Wars. It's okay if they have an American accent. It's not a big deal. Like, I feel like they were probably scared that there wouldn't be enough separation, which is not this biggest movie's problem. Like, if that's what they were worried about, like, dialect. Because, I mean, if it was, that it wouldn't surprise me. But it's okay for people to sound the same. You can see it's a different character and a different race. You don't have to do that, you know?
Yeah, and I mean, it is right on the nose. I mean, like, and Caleb's absolutely right. It's aged horribly, and yeah, no, for sure. What else, Caleb? Is that what you got?
I'll leave it at those two for now.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. Well played, good sir. Collins 4.
I need to pause for 1 second. My battery's about to die. I need to do a little wiring.
Okay, no worries. Well, let's hear Rex's thoughts then.
I think one thing that was kind of off-putting for me was the CGI. Like, some of it was really good, and some of it just looked terrible. And I think Jar Jar kind of looked terrible. I think they maybe should have made him a puppet for sure. I know they wanted him to like do all these weird flips and stuff, but but it just doesn't mesh with the the original trilogy, and it looks terrible now, and it just that kind of bugs me a little bit. And they probably spent a ton of money on that, which they could have just used puppets and made it look better. So that was a big negative for me. Another thing was how Darth Maul dies. I thought it was terrible. Like, he watches Obi-Wan jump over him, and he turns around and he's dead. It's like he could have, like, I don't know, just like if someone's jumping at you, are you just gonna stand there? And he like literally just freezes and pauses and does nothing and gets cut in half. So I thought that was kind of, I mean, that's a small thing, but
I think I remember reading somewhere that like that might have been one of the earliest instances of like force stasis potentially being used. Because like in a dire moment based off of emotion, like that you could argue that Obi-Wan could have willed that to happen through the force. So I mean, I like that argument because I've always had a problem with that too. But
yeah, I mean, you can argue anything with the force.
Yeah, but the problem is that's not conveyed to the viewer at all.
Exactly.
You're just supposed to believe that he jumps up and blades him, and it's whatever.
Yeah, and then there's an explanation after the fact. Is like, well, that's what happened. Like, that's what it was. It's like
that's Star Wars in a nutshell, though. You have to basically consume everything in order to.
It's no like Princess Leia Superman flying through space, but
way off topic.
Don't start. Don't start. You.
But I'm trying to think of other negatives. There's some slow parts for sure where it gets political and you want to take a little nap, but
okay,
that's about it.
Nice. Go ahead, Caleb.
Guys, add on to one thing Rex said. I completely agree about the bad CGI like models, especially like Jar Jar. I think that they had just stuck with the puppets, but the puppets don't look super great either. Like the Nemoidians, especially when they're talking, look just terrible. Yeah, it's just jarring. I mean, they're in this weird time period where they're kind of in between going full CGI and having a bunch of puppets. But I wish they would have just gone with one or the other for the whole thing. And probably to keep it more tonally in line with the original trilogy, they probably should have just gone all puppets. But it's 1999, so I guess they're going to make some weird decisions.
Yeah. Another thing I wanted to say, too, I want to kind of piggyback off of all the stuff we've been saying. Compare this movie to a couple of things. Mission Impossible 2, The Fast and the Furious, which we've covered on in this production house a lot. I think Fast and the Furious, for me personally, I would rather choose that one to watch. But Phantom Menace came out before that, and it came out before Mission Impossible 2. So I feel like the decisions made, and I guess you could argue like things were rapidly like increasing as the more time went on. I think that this movie still does a pretty good job, like especially in comparison to those two movies where CGI is concerned. And that was just a thought that had come to me as I was watching it. I was like, you know what? I'd still rather watch this movie than Mission Impossible 2. Personally, like if I had to choose between The Fast and the Furious and this movie, I mean, let's be real. I'm picking Fast and the Furious every time. You know what I mean? But I would have given a second glance. I think it would have given it a run for its money for sure. So, what do you say we move into things we would have changed? Yeah, Mikey didn't get to go because we skipped him. Go ahead, Mikey. My bad. My B boo boo.
Sorry, technical difficulties. One thing, I mean, right off the bat. I mean, this is kind of off. It's on topic, but also off topic. With all the stuff that Disney has or hasn't done with Star Wars, now that it's basically out of George Lucas's hands, one thing I think they could do to really get fans back on their side, remaster this movie. just go into it and just make it look amazing. Just redo almost every scene, or even like video game remaster it. Leave the scene, but just completely cover over it with just amazing CGI and just
kind of like what they did
Disney-fy
with like
it.
the original trilogy when the digital remasters came out.
No, not George Lucas it, Disney it. Don't change anything. Just make everything look amazing.
I just was like talking more like set pieces and not like the dancing and the cantina stuff, but like, you know, crisping up, like changing.
That's I just want to make that clear. I don't agree with the George Lucas stuff, but if they just make it look great, I feel like that fixes a lot of things with this movie. Like, could you imagine like the pod racing scene, but just like amazing looking and just like, or even just that last fight, even with Jar Jar? I think it could be so cool if they would do something like that. But that's a big thing. And then something that's always kind of irritated me is just, I love the battle droids and I love just the regular droids, but like, and basically all the droids are cool. Every ship and tank and everything to do with the droids, I hate the design of. I hate the tanks. I hate the ships. They're all like round and brown. There's nothing like identifiable about them, and they're just super boring. It's not so much the color. I don't mind the color. It's just, it seems like they didn't care. You know what I mean?
I also think that's kind of playing into the Trade Federation as a whole, because the Trade Federation, just spewed out, and it's just like, this is cheap. Let's get them out there. Because I mean, you think about it, the battle droids in large quantities, sure, like they're a force to be reckoned with. They're not efficient. They should be able to, if they were high quality, they should be able to realize like, oh, wait a minute, like this is a Jedi. Like, can you kill this guy? You know what I mean? Like, go ahead.
I agree with that.
No, it's valid for sure. I agree.
Yeah, like that's a big thing for me. And then kind of touching back on the dialect thing, at least make Jar Jar understandable. Like half the time, I was just like, well, I don't have subtitles on, so I'm not going to get that piece of dialogue. I have because then the Jedi will just be like, because I feel like they don't know what he was saying either. Like that was a big thing. And then,
is Jar Jar racist too? Because there's like Mexican words in there.
Dude, yeah, he's super Jamaican. Yeah, like that whole race. And then like how like the main Gungan is like Kevin from The Office when he decides to stop using words. Like, me no speak Jedi, like that type of thing. That was awful. Why could Jar Jar, the idiot of the entire place, use full sentences, kind of, but then the king,
maybe they could remaster all their whole languages too.
Dude, that was I thinking too, like a remaster digitally and then bring in a bunch of voice actors and just dub over, like, or even use the original actors if they're still around and then do without a dialect. Like, that would be super cool. And then another one. So I never caught this in the other watch-throughs, but did Anakin's mom bet themselves on the pod race?
No.
And that's how
a Hutt.
Are you sure?
It was like Attila the Hutt or something.
She's in
not Jabba the Hutt. Or
no, okay, Attila. She's behind Jabba.
Attila owned them. Attila bet
she
them.
Did.
And then lost them to Watto.
Okay.
Now Watto owns them. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, that's, yeah.
That makes sense, because Watto was kind of like afraid of the Hutts.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But, okay. Well, that makes sense. I was confused on that, because I was like, because that's what they made it sound like. They didn't say that she bet them. She said that they said that it made it sound like Anakin's mom bet him and lost. And I was like, I don't remember that.
It's taken a few watch-throughs for me to get that out of it.
Yeah. Which isn't, that's not good. There's a lot of just little things in this movie where I'm just like, could you be a little more clear on like what's going on, rather than, especially if you got the kids movie argument going, George. I mean, I don't know. There's just so much where it's just storytelling and then just simple things like that just make this movie really hard to enjoy. It takes you out of it, and I hate that because I want to like this movie. I really do. But there's just a lot that it's just little things that build up like that. I'm like, ugh, man. But I don't know. That might be a little nitpicky on some of those, but those are just things that stood out to me.
I was going to say just one more little thing we didn't touch on. Get rid of midichlorians. We don't need them. Completely unnecessary to what the Force is and how the Force works, and what is expressed in the original trilogy, what has been expressed in the sequel trilogy, what's expressed in the books. It's so unnecessary. Look, we get it. There's like an organism within you that allows you or to use the Force or whatever. It's just, it makes something that's already kind of mysterious and adds to the magic of the series, and it overcomplicates it and tries to scientify it, and it doesn't need to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. It takes away from the mystique of the Force. Like, I don't need to know how the Force works. Like, a good enough, the better explanation, it's like, oh yeah, there's a scientific organism within you that like determines whether or not you're Force sensitive. Okay, I don't really care about that. What the Force surrounding every living thing and the power being drawn from that is way more interesting, because at the end of the day, okay, Anakin has more midichlorians supposedly than Yoda, but I never saw Anakin do anything significant with the Force ever. So in the end, it doesn't really matter, because it's like, I don't know, I attribute it to like, you can know, like if you play an instrument, if you see like, okay, I see this guy doing this thing, you know it's gonna take time to be able to do that thing. That doesn't mean you just inherently know how to do it. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't put in the work to like utilize it, it doesn't really matter. So I agree with you, Caleb. Like, your midichlorian count shouldn't really determine anything to do with the Force, in my opinion. Go ahead, Mikey.
I partially disagree. I don't fully disagree. I kind of like where they were going with it in The Mandalorian, where it's like kind of a mixture. Like, anybody can have it, but it's also like, but it's measurable. I think that's cool, but I kind of do like to where it's like he is like off the scales, so that's why he can like pod race, and that's why he can fly.
Yeah,
and stuff.
I think
but
they
what's up,
were
Rex?
trying to. They wanted you to know like how strong he was, you know, and they needed like some way to convey that. And I think there maybe could have been a better way, but I don't totally like have a big issue with it.
Yeah, I mean they could have like showed him like working on his pod racer, and he's like levitating tools towards him while he's like doing stuff and stuff like that. But I think like, since he was trying to do world building here, he had to do like a solid like, this is canon dialogue of what the Force is and can be measured by. So I get where he was going, but I definitely see the issue with it at the same time. But yeah, I don't know. I really like the idea of midichlorian stuff, because like, I don't know.
You see, I've flipped back and forth
Yeah.
on that several times, but I think with where Star Wars has gone now, it's like I don't know. They never refer to it anymore.
Right.
Now
really.
that,
It's
now that Jon
like,
Favreau's doing it,
in the way that yeah, it's just like, if I don't know, it just seems so unnecessary. And I think Rex like was kind of hitting it on the head of like, they needed a way to tell that Anakin was going to be more powerful as like the chosen one.
Mhm.
But I feel like they could have done that in some other way of, you know,
it could have just been an unspoken thing.
yeah, it could have been an unspoken thing. It could have been like some sort of test. Even the fact that he's pod racing and no other human can pod racing, he's never received
'Cause
any
they
sort of
explain
like
that,
force
too.
training.
They could have just said that, and it'd be, oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Or they could have said like,
Yeah,
you could have sensed him being like so much stronger in the Force than Yoda or something.
Yeah,
I kind of I
Yeah.
dipped out. I lost internet for a
Yeah.
couple of minutes there, but
we noticed.
I'm sure you guys just kept the conversation going. Here's my thing with
a little bit.
yeah, I'll chop it up, no big deal. The only thing about like being measured, like I get what you're saying too, Mikey, but to that hat, then this is why midichlorians shouldn't be a thing, okay? Because the same rules that apply to Anakin should be applied to Rey, but for some reason that's different. It can't be just based off of skill and potential. That can't be all it is, in my opinion. Because you tell people that hate Rey, it's like, yeah, Anakin had all the skill in the world too. Like, he pod Rey, like, yeah, sure, he saw the controls, but he had a basic knowledge already, because even he points out to the captain and says, oh yeah, that's the pitch and yada yada yada. He knew what he kind of already got a sense that he had a basic idea of how it worked already before he ever got into it. So the fact that the captain shows him, that doesn't mean anything. In a lot of ways. And Ryan, I'm sure if he's listening to this, he can rebuttal or whatever, but that to me is why we should not measure force ability. Because, you know what I mean? Like, because at the end of the day, yeah, go ahead, Rex.
There was just another thing that kind of totally different topic, but something that's kind of irritated me in a way is the whole prophecy thing about him being the chosen one. And so that ends up not being him, obviously. But it ends up being Luke, right? But then we have the sequels, and it's like,
so
was Luke actually the chosen? Like,
you see, the prophecy thing has created a complete like rift in Star Wars, because you'd have people that would argue that it was Anakin, you'd have people argue that it's Luke, and you'd have probably people argue that it's Rey. You'd have all three,
right?
And you don't need that. It's way too complicated and just dumb.
Well, what they need to do is have some Force sage. Because they're obviously not afraid to do that, because they've done it in the Clone Wars, they've done it all across the board. Have some sort of Force guy or whatever. There's like, yeah, we created the prophecy, like we did, because we needed to give each generation something to look forward to or something to have hope in. Then it makes sense for all three of them to fit into that role, and it's like it was never really meant to be for one person. It was meant to be a continuing, rotating, cyclical thing of, yeah, like, the darkness rises, then the light rises, because we've had that before, right? Darkness rises, light rises, and there's one person to bring balance to that for a while. Like, I wish they would have something and retcon that or add to it in some way, because all of them make sense, and all of them have their own path, except, Rey, really did bring balance to the Force for a while. Each of them did, in a way, except for Anakin. So if anyone isn't, it's probably Anakin.
People would argue that Anakin killed Anakin turned good and killed Palpatine.
Yeah, that's true too.
And so, like, you could probably have people argue that Kylo Ren was the chosen one because he helped Rey.
Yeah,
like,
true.
Seriously, it's
true.
so convoluted. And
yeah.
But Gabe, you're right. It's like it's more of a battle between light and dark, and a balance between light and dark, and it's something that all of the Jedi and contribute to, kind of equally, but you don't get that message, and it's just complicated and weird and creates more arguments than anything else.
And I think they were trying to kind of, I don't know, there's a lot of religious like dogma found within like the Jedi religion. And I think that was kind of their way to kind of like insert that in and make it relatable. It's like, yeah, like the Jedi religion, it is what it is, but the Jedi religion is what it is, but the Force doesn't belong to anybody. It is what it is. Go ahead, Mike. Yeah, I see you've been trying to say stuff forever.
I feel like, kind of jumping back to the chosen one thing, I feel like it's not a chosen one. It's like a chosen, like, line. Like basically it starts with, like, Qui-Gon. He's like, oh, the chosen one. And then it goes to Obi-Wan. And then it goes to Luke. And then it goes to wait, no, it goes from Obi-Wan to Anakin to Luke to Rey. All trained by the same people and all in relation to each other. I feel like it's a chosen line, and maybe you could say that maybe their prophecy was wrong, and that it wasn't like a chosen one, but maybe a chosen
path, maybe.
Path, yeah.
But then why not make Rey a Skywalker if that's...
And that's the thing. That's right. Going back to people probably arguing that it's Kylo Ren, because at least Kylo Ren's a Skywalker.
Yeah.
Like... and that's the thing.
There's huge problems.
It needs to be retcon, and I do think there needs to be something in saying like, yeah, we had to give someone we had to give a group of people, something to look forward to.
And doesn't it mean like a balance would be equal?
Well, I mean, it technically is, because they kind of, I think, wasn't it the Clone Wars where they're like, or maybe it was the newer movies where they were like, even if one guy's really powerful, that means that there's probably either one guy or like multiple people that equal his power level. I think it was the Clone Wars when they had like that thing where they met up with like basically the versions of the Force of dark and light and then gray.
Yeah, exactly.
They kind of do explain it there.
They do. They did a good job there,
Yeah.
but it's like nowhere else in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. But I don't know. That's Star Wars though, dude. Like
Yeah.
But
They don't make it simple at all.
yeah.
And that's the thing that I think has made Star Wars just so divisive, is that it's all so complicated that
Yeah.
it divides people, which is kind of sad.
It's sad, but it's also like what brings everybody together. But
Yeah, in a sense.
It's like, at least we have something to talk about.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
that's very
everybody
true.
can have their own opinion.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Gabe wants us to go into talking about what we would have changed. So I don't know if you want to start with that, Caleb.
Yeah, sure. So going back to kind of Anakin, what I mentioned earlier about him just not working, I think that you could fix a whole lot of problems just by making Anakin like 5 or 6 years older. I think you said earlier that Padme is supposed to be 14. I know she's being portrayed by a 17-year-old. That's not out of the norm at all. But just there's no reason for him to be 5 or years younger than her and look like way younger than her. It's just it was just a really weird creative choice, because then you get rid of the whole child acting problem too. If he's a little bit older, you wouldn't have that jarringness of it all. And maybe they wanted him to be younger just to maybe make him more relatable to kids, and that seems to be like an overarching theme of this movie, is they just wanted to shove it down children's throats for whatever weird reason, probably to sell a bunch of toys. But it would have been better if they just made him a little bit older and made it a lot less creepy. You don't get that creepy scene at the end of the movie where they're eyeing each other, and it's a 9-year-old eyeing a teenager, and it's just so weird.
I don't have to feel bad about thinking Natalie Portman's hot, you know.
Yeah, it's just I don't. Oh my God, Rex.
She's 16, bro.
Yeah,
God.
it's just I don't know. It was just a really weird choice, and I think it would have cleared up a lot of things, because ultimately these movies, like these prequels, need to be Anakin Skywalker like centric. If there's one thing you need to nail in these movies, it's Anakin Skywalker and how he becomes Darth Vader. But we're gonna get into this too with the next movie, but these first 2 movies just fail at that so like badly.
Do you think they were going for like trying to make him look innocent and pure? And maybe that's why they chose a younger kid.
I mean, maybe, but why can't you do that with a 14 or 15-year-old? And like I could see another argument of being like, well, but if he was 14 or 15, he'd be way too old to be like accepted as a Padawan. It's like, yeah, but we don't know that's a rule yet. We don't know that the Jedi, take kids at like 2 or 3 years old and start training them in Jedi then. We don't know any of things. None of those rules have been established in this universe yet, because all that we have is the original trilogy to go off of. There's no reason that you can't, make him pure and still be 14 or 15. Look at, like The Outsiders. I'll just throw out an example. Ponyboy in that movie is probably about as pure as you can get. He's a good, moral, pure character. But he's like a 14 or 15-year-old. Why can't you do that with Anakin Skywalker? Like, come on. Like, I mean, why not?
If he's the chosen one, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
They already say he's already too old to train. So why does he have to be 9? Like,
yeah, and that's my point. Like,
Yeah.
why can't you say that about him being 14 or 15? And
Yeah,
instead, they take them away from their families when they're 7 or 8 or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter because they haven't established that rule yet in this universe.
yeah, if they already make the exception at the end of the movie, why can't he be 12, 13, something like that?
That's a good point.
Yeah.
Nice. I dipped out for a couple of minutes. Again, internet troubles. So was your main thing you would have changed Anakin?
Yeah, I would have made him older. Yeah.
Okay. Mikey?
I mean, I don't want to say that take out the Trade Federation like thing, but I really think like instead of putting that kind of like the reason that they're traveling around so much, I feel like just make it Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Qui-Gon and Padme for most of the movie, and just have them just never leave Naboo. I mean, why do they have to leave and then she has to decide that they have to go back? If she's so dedicated, why wouldn't they just like forcefully go down to the Gungans, or like make it like a jungle movie where they're hiding out and they have to like join forces with the Gungans, and the whole movie is them trying to get together with the Gungans. Then Jar Jar's character makes a lot more sense. Why he's like there instead of having to make it a life debt thing. Have them like do character building with that race, and then at the end of the movie maybe like leave and go and talk to the Senate and do all that, or I don't know, because they do give the thing where they cut out comms at the very beginning of this movie where they have no communication. I think that kind of sucks. You know, because you would think they could cut off communication, but they have to have some sort of other way of communicating. It's not just one, you know what I mean? It's not just one like communication. You would think in the very future,
you never
distant
know,
past.
right?
Yeah, like that's the thing. It's sci-fi, but you know what I mean though? Like
Yeah, I mean, it's still better than Casino Planet, I think. But
yes, that is true.
I agree with you, for sure.
But yeah, I just it's very diluted, and I feel like that's where you lose touch with a lot of the characters, because you do leave, go back, and then leave again, and then it's really confusing. But
yeah, I was
that's my
definitely
biggest thing.
confused, especially when I was younger.
Exactly.
I was
Good
really
movie.
confused about where they were going and like what the Senate was and all that stuff, and who Senator Palpatine. I mean, I forgot his name. Senator. It is Palpatine, right? Okay.
Yeah.
About
Yeah, or-
who he was. When you guys first watched that movie, did you know that he was
Yeah.
that he was Emperor Palpatine? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, because I was like 6 years old or whatever the first time I saw the movie,
Yeah.
and I was retarded. But like, but
I-
yeah, I
I
kind of beat
think
you
it's
over the
the
head with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I only knew because Carter and Gabe were like, you know that Senator Palpatine is actually the
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
sweet.
I don't
cool.
think I knew when I first watched it, but I was pretty young too.
Yeah. And like, if they changed it to where they never left the planet and still had some sort of communication, and then just showed Palpatine like doing like his orchestrating while they're not there, I feel like that would have been cooler, rather than having them go there and then doing all the tiny things. It just felt like wasted time. You know what I mean? It would have been cooler just to focus on like that war, and like they're stuck there, and like this is not going to be going well if we stay here. You know what I mean?
You can't take out, like, it is cool to see Corellia because of how big of, like, you know, it is.
But I mean, you
in the
see
Star
so
Wars
much of it later though in the other movies.
That's true. Yeah.
I wouldn't have had.
Coruscant.
Yeah, Coruscant.
Sorry, Coruscant. Yeah.
Where's Corellia?
It's on the same planet, right?
Oh, just
Yeah.
a different province.
Yes.
Wait, I thought Coruscant
Same
was
system,
the planet.
I think. It's in the core.
Yeah.
It's a
yeah.
planet.
It's
One
in the
of those.
cores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
sure.
but yeah, there's just too much traveling. I don't know. They do it in other movies, and I feel like they got away with it, like in 1, 2, and 3, or what is it? 3, 4, and 5? 4, 5, and 6. Yeah, they did a good job of that, but it's too much in this one. They should have just made it simple, especially because it's a base story building movie, and it was really diluted with all of that
Yeah.
for me. But who am I to say? Just don't want to be.
Hey, we're all wannabes.
Yeah.
My thing, I probably guessing it's the same as you, Gabe, but Jar Jar would be what I would have changed. And obviously they needed some sort of comedic relief, like they needed something, right? Or the movie would have been just so serious and stern and dry. But there's got to be a better way to do it other than Jar Jar. So definitely taking Jar Jar out would be like one of the biggest things I would change.
Okay. Mine are more small, but I think when you think about them a little bit, could potentially be big things. Whenever you send, Obi-Wan and Padme and all them away, kind of rearrange the whole Senate thing a lot to where whenever they get back, Palpatine is already senator, basically. Because then, and also it kind of ties into my next thing. Whenever the Gungans go to battle with the droids, because earlier in the movie, Mace Windu says, he's like, I don't think we would have been able to, I think we would have known if the Sith had returned. You kind of see their moxie as a group at that point in time. Little do they know that Palpatine's about to come to power. So kind of showing that relationship, an underlying relationship, what you could have done is whenever Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan get back, like, we got to do this thing, we're going to war, Palpatine could have been like, oh, okay, well, as my first act, like, I want to ensure that we're, on good terms, basically. So I knew you were returning, so I've brought, another Jedi or a couple other Jedi here to help lead the war front. Because then that would make sense and tie into each movie leading afterwards. On Geonosia, whenever they show up, it would have made sense. It would have been like, oh, thank God, like Palpatine sent them, the Republic sent the Jedi to help. Then it would also have tied in even on a bigger scale whenever they're generals, and they're doing their thing in the army. It's like, okay, cool. Palpatine would have made that relationship and made that suggestion and would have gotten them used to him. It would have been like showing their relationship in that movie, because you don't really see them. Every time you see them interacting, they're at odds. So when he has that act of good faith with them, and he's like, okay, yeah. Plus, I think it would have been dope to have had Jedi helping the Gungans like do their thing. It's like, oh my God. And then you would have that going on at the same time as Darth Maul's fight. And I think that's a reason why Darth Maul's fight is so awesome, is that it's like, oh, finally we get to see some like Jedi on Jedi action, like, or Jedi versus Sith action, But I do think it would have been cool to have a couple more Jedi on the battlefield doing their thing and saying like, yeah, no, like they can do this other stuff too. Like they're not just like space agents doing this stuff. I think that would have been a really cool way to introduce that relationship, because then whenever they're at odds in episode 2, you could have had some dialogue like, yeah, have I ever, he could have been like, have I ever given you reason not to trust me? Or, I understand, the hesitation of X, Y, and Z, but trust me on this. Like I'm making decisions for the good of the Republic. Then when he twists the knife in the third movie, it makes it that much more like, oh God, like, it's even more of a betrayal in my opinion. And that was something I noticed this time, is like, I feel like we need more Jedi here in this movie. That's my biggest thing I would have changed. And I would have added a couple of other things, with that, the timing of his coming into chancellorship. Is that's, and obviously I already talked about Jar Jar, so, but honestly, that's the biggest thing that I would have changed. Go ahead, Mikey.
I don't want to step on you, like, if you're still...
I'm done.
Oh, okay. Well, I was still thinking about what I said earlier, and if they would have changed, even if they still did the same traveling, if they would have changed the order, like, say, the beginning of the movie is them finding Anakin and taking them with them, and then going to do their mission, and then it's an Anakin, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan movie, to where they're just all three together the entire movie, instead of like halfway through the movie, then they're like, oh yeah, we need to take this kid with us because he's strong. Like, if it's a Skywalker, that it's about the Skywalker. Like, that's what the whole Star Wars movies are about. Start it off with them getting Anakin. I don't care about the other stuff if Anakin's not there. You know what I mean? Like, it's supposed to be about him, and it just feels like this movie is everything but about Anakin, except he's just there. Yeah,
that's kind of what, like, whenever we were, someone was saying they weren't like crazy about Anakin, I found him very just meh. I didn't find him as cringy as I had in the past. Maybe it's because there's a litany of other cringy things, found in the Star Wars movies as well as Clone Wars, and maybe I'm just immune to it now at this point. But there's nothing significant about him. It's like, and it kind of goes back to this thing. It's like, oh, he's strong in the Force and he can be an ace pilot and a great pod racer. He does nothing with the Force visibly that we can see. I wish I could have seen him do something, a manifestation of, okay, yes, this kid has the Force, other than piloting a ship and being a pod racer. That would have been cool. Anything, like move an apple, something. And I guess he was like, doing the cards and all that, and that, but still, like, something physical. Go ahead, Rex.
I don't know. I disagree. I think it's somewhat in canon to not overtly like have some force power. Like, I don't think Luke had anything crazy like that, right? Was he moving stuff? Or?
He moved the lightsaber in Empire with virtually no training. That was like right after A New Hope. That's like boom, boom. Like, and again, we didn't really see Luke training on screen, but that was like, am I wrong? Go ahead, Caleb.
But he's also older. Like, this is a little kid.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I mean, I think you have multiple extremes of it. Luke, I think's training is kind of subtle because you see him getting training from Obi-Wan before he moves the lightsaber in Empire. He's, working with the droid and the lightsaber on the Millennium Falcon and A New Hope and stuff. And it's very subtle and kind of gradual he reaches out in the Force to destroy the Death Star.
Yeah, that's true.
Shoot the shot without the targeting computer. So it's gradual for Luke. And he is, he's very strong in the Force and he's having to do all those things on his own. On the other end of the spectrum, you have that kid on Canto Bight who's just, Force, pulling the broom to himself and stuff. And I don't know if that's what I would want out of Anakin Skywalker in this movie either. But it is a weird way that they kind of developed his Force abilities. The only really thing that you get is that, he's pod racing. He's the only human that can do it. And he has a high midichlorian account. And that's basically it.
One thing that they do, if they would have did it at the beginning of the movie, is maybe Qui-Gon hears rumors of this kid that can pod race. He's the only human on the planet that can do it. And he's like, oh, he probably is Force sensitive, and goes and does the Jedi test that the Council does to Anakin while he's there, where he's like holding up pictures and he's waiting for him to tell him what the pictures are. They start off the movie with that and you're like, oh, okay. So there is something there, but they don't tell you any of that. Like, until what? That's like at the end of the movie almost, isn't it? Where he finally meets the Council?
Yeah,
it's that's in the last third of the movie.
Yeah, it's like 3/4 of the way. I don't know. I feel like moving the broomstick to you, okay, maybe that's a little on the nose, but I don't know. I do think that there's room for subtlety. And if this guy is supposed to be, if they're telling us, putting aside all the other information that we know about Star Wars, like if they're saying in this movie that this kid's the chosen one, and having him, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to see him move something small, like maybe, like again, like maybe at dinner, maybe at dinner, instead of having freaking Jar Jar stick his tongue out and get the apple, maybe have Anakin like bring an apple to him or something. I don't know. Like it's shoulda, woulda, coulda, small things.
Or force choke him till he dies.
Go ahead, Caleb.
I will say it is interesting, especially reading the books, that they're in the Thrawn books, there's like various kids that have different Force abilities and stuff. They don't really have a whole lot of training. It's just something that they have. And I do think, I don't know, maybe this is just, playing devil's advocate and just trying to justify it, that maybe there are just these kids have different Force abilities before they receive training. Maybe your ability is, you're more attuned to being able to move things in your mind. Maybe like in the Thrawn books, there's these, Chiss children who have this Force ability where they can help navigate through hyperspace. Or if you're like Anakin, and one of these things, and it's kind of expounded on in books as well, is that he can see things before that they happen. That's one of his big Force abilities, is he has this premonition of being able to see things before they happen. Of course, a lot of other Jedi have that as well, but that's one of his big ones that allows him to pod race. And maybe that's kind of, what they're getting at. But again, Star Wars doesn't always do the best job of laying all of that out there plainly for the average viewer to understand.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it. It's like more of a passive. It's more of a passive ability. It's not something he has to actively tap into. Like he just can do it. It's almost like breathing for him. Go ahead, Rex.
I almost feel like George Lucas was like thinking too big, and like he wanted the universe to be almost too big to where it takes away from the movies, you know?
Yeah, a little too ambitious. I think that's fair. Yeah, for sure. Especially since after 4, 5, and 6, like, you know, there was 15 years of books, you know, and all kinds of stuff that had come out, you know, and yeah, I mean, it is interesting to think about for sure. Do we have anything else we want to add to this discussion before we put a number on this bad boy? I think we pretty much said it all after almost 2 hours and several internet dips. So whether you love this movie or hate this movie, ladies and gentlemen, it's a part of Star Wars, and there are key moments here that matter, and there's key things in here that matter whether you like the way that they're portrayed or not. So there you have it. This is the beginning of the story, and this is where it all starts. I would have given this movie like a 4 a few years ago, and I can't remember exactly what I gave it the first time we watched it, but with new eyes and kind of seeing how it plays into the bigger universe and trying to take it for what it is, you guys are going to think I'm crazy. I'm going to give this movie a 7. I think it's fine. I think it's passable for sure. There's lots of things that haven't aged. If I put myself in the time period being the age I am now, if I had watched it for the first time back then, I'd have been like, God, that one guy was so freaking annoying. I hadn't had a lifetime of hating him to do that. It's like, God, that guy was annoying, but it was still freaking awesome. Who's that guy with the red face? You know? So I'm going to give it a 7. So, Caleb, what do you think?
I'll give it a 6. Again, this movie's really easy to kind of drag. And we've, of course, brought out a lot of problems with it in a lot of ways. I like Mikey's ideas of how to fix it a lot, actually. I always like the ideas of where you just play with the structure of the story a little bit. And sometimes you can take a mediocre movie and make it into a good movie. But yeah, it's a 6. You can still have a lot of fun watching this, especially if you take off those critical glasses. And yeah, it is, I mean, kind of the groundwork for the story in a sense. So, yeah.
Thank you, Caleb. Man, I struggle with this movie more than I struggled with any of Clone Wars, like the series, which is saying a lot because I struggle with a lot of that series, you know? And this isn't saying this is a bad movie, but like I was saying, I don't love it. I don't hate it. I don't like it. I don't not like it. So I'm going to go right down the middle and just give it a 5.50. Just a 5. Because it's not the worst movie of all time, but it's definitely the weakest movie in the Star Wars series, in my opinion. Even with the new trilogy, there is some stuff that I don't like in those, but there's just a lot about it that is just like, why?
When's the last time you watched Attack of the Clones?
I've always enjoyed that trilogy. Like, this movie has been the main hookup on that trilogy for me because I enjoy those movies, but this one, it's just Jar Jar. I know the animation hasn't fared well, but I mean, compared to the first part of the movie, like I said at the beginning, like, it just doesn't match up. There's just so many things that I'm just like, why, you know? And I would definitely watch this movie again. Like, there's no Star Wars movie that I will never like not watch, you know. But for me, it's a 5.
Rex,
it's a 5.
My turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's things about what Mikey says that I agree with, but it's still Star Wars to me. It's still like a sci-fi movie that I love, and I don't know. There's still things I really like about it, and that's why I'm gonna give it a 7. I like that it feels complete, like its own movie, whereas I think 2 and 3 kind of feel a bit blended together. And the original trilogy, like, each movie felt like, you know, its own movie. And I think this one does a decent, okay, passable job at feeling like its own thing. And they do lay the groundwork. And there's things that I really like. obviously there's a big fat Jar Jar elephant in the room when we watch it, but if you can put that somewhat aside, then I think the movie's definitely passable as a 7. That's what I'm gonna give it.
Fair scores and fair reviews all across the board, in my opinion. It's turning into this thing too, where there was a time period where like the original trilogy looked like, yeah, this has aged well though. The live action stuff has aged well. And I think that's kind of where I'm getting at with this movie, where I think a lot of the live action interaction has aged pretty well. And I'm starting to, I don't know. This has been, I think I watched this movie like a year and a half, 2 years ago, and I was like, you know what? It's not that bad. I watched it this time after watching all the Clone Wars stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I actually really enjoyed this movie. So there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been our review for episode 1 of Star Wars, the first edition into the Skywalker saga. We did it. If we can get through, next is going to be the real test, with Attack of the Clones.
Caleb's going to fall asleep.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. So, you know where to find us, ladies and gentlemen, at the Wannabe Collective. Yeah, it's late there for Caleb right now. It's almost 11.
No, I mean during the next one.
Oh, yeah. There you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for putting up with us this evening and listening to us and putting up with our technical difficulties, if you noticed any. You know where to find us. You can email us, as I said before. Find us on Twitter. Caleb, where can people find you?
At ChiefNNY18 on Twitter.
And Mikey?
Man, this Mike. At LowKeyMC7 on Twitter.
And Rex?
At Rex90, WRCKS90 on Twitter.
There you have it. Make sure you let us know. We'll be tweeting out, cues for your thoughts, and we definitely look forward to seeing you on the next episode. But until next time, say goodbye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Adios, amigos.
Now this is podcasting.
Oh
my God. Well, whatever possessed you to check out any of the content that you saw today, I just want to say thank you so much for doing so. If you check the description down below, you'll see that there's a variety of different projects that I'm associated with. This is Wannabe Critic Productions after all. So I just wanted to say, if you enjoyed what you saw today, consider giving some of those other projects a chance as well. There's a lot of stuff that I'm a part of that that I do. If you were here for me or for someone else that you saw today, again, just thank you for checking it out, and I hope to see you again. But until next time, I'm Gabriel Fast, and I'll always be the Wannabe Critic.